Yes, Chair, you've received apologies from Councillor Robert Alden, Councillor Bill Garvin and Councillor Sadat Mia.
Thank you. Any further?
Yeah, Councillor Anvil Ward.
Thank you. Any further? Item 2, are there any declarations of interest? None? Item 3, Chair's remarks. I'm pressing the wrong one. Okay, under Chair's remarks, a number of former members have passed away, and so I want to kick off with tributes. Councillor Locke is going to do 2 of them, and I shall do the 3rd. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. It is my extremely sad duty today to pay tribute to Birmingham City Council's elected members who have passed away. Both served on the Transport Delivery Committee. They are Councillor Mohammed Fazal and Councillor Lord Mayor Mohammed Azim. Both were hard-working, highly respected by their wards, by their ward colleagues and Labour Party. Councillor Fazal ward was Spark Hill and Councillor Azim was Sparkbrook and Walsall Heath East. Councillor Hussain was Councillor Azim's ward colleague. May they both rest in peace. Can I ask that the committee pass on its condolences to their families and its thanks for their contribution to the TDC.
Any other members? Well, Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you very much, Chair. I knew both councillors Fasal and Azim, and I and the entirely Conservative group would like to be fully associated with the comments and condolences as detailed by Councillor Locke.
Thank you. Any further? I would like to pay tribute to the late former councillor Graham Wilkes from Walsall, who passed away on the 26th of October after a long struggle with cancer. Graham served, I think, from 2000 until 2012, so I think there'd be a number of officers here present who would remember him, but I'm not sure whether there's anybody else among the Transport Delivery Committee members. All I want to say is that Graham was a former railman, and he really did make a big contribution to getting the passenger perspective on travel, and particularly rail travel, well articulated. The other big thing about Graham is that he had a wicked sense of humour, and what I did in his memory is to get some calendars printed of his 2003 Passenger Transport Authority calendar, which I've updated to 2023. So if anybody wants a copy, there's a picture of him steering the Mersey ferry on one of the many visits the PTA used to. Well, he wasn't really steering it, I hope. Anyway, so if anybody would like a copy of that, it is really funny, and there is a character in there called the Fat Controller. I won't go into any further detail about that. So it's a series of different photographs featuring some officers. Oh, there's the floozy and the jacuzzi there with a former PTA member featuring, and there's the late Councillor Roger Horton featuring as the Angel of the North. So it's funny stuff for anybody that knew these characters. They're free to have, but people are invited to make a donation to the Railway Benevolent Fund if they would so wish. So just talk to me afterwards if you'd like a copy of the calendar. Thank you. Timothy.
Thank you very much. Having served on this committee and its predecessors since 2007, I do know former Councillor Wilkes, and again, on behalf of myself and the entire Conservative group, we would like to be fully associated with your comments and condolences. All I would say is that surely Roger should have been the Angel of the West brackets, Bromwich, close brackets. Thank you, Chair.
That's a good one. Thank you. Secondly, I know from various TDC members that they're under time pressure with meetings back at the ranch, as it were, after this. So that I'm going to ask for two things, really. First of all, that people stick to the point and are as brief as they can while having enough time to make their point. And can you please stick to the point? But I've just spoken to Councillor Huxtable about this. If I shall seek to adjourn the meeting if we are not finished by 3. And that would be an early adjournment. So in other words, we come back ASAP. And finally, there's a late paper, which is new agenda item 11. And I'd just like to ask Dan and possibly Pete Bond, who've just had a conversation with me, because there's an issue about where it goes on the agenda because there's a private bit in it. So Dan or Pete.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you said, at the end of last week, the report that was previously marked to follow on your agenda, which was item number 11, the West Midlands Bus Network, that was sent round in a complete pack, so you had all the reports. So you may well have noticed the report and a couple of appendices are in the public part of the meeting, but then there's one appendices which is also in the private part because it contains commercially sensitive information. So discussing with Pete Bond and the Chair before the meeting, it's clear that the presentation of that report, as well as the likely questions from the committee and the answers to those questions, would not be able to be undertaken without revealing commercially sensitive information that can be considered in the private part of the agenda. So what I've advised the Chair to do is to take the whole of item 11 on the private part of the agenda. And obviously the written report itself is in the public domain. It's on our website. It's been made available publicly, and that stands, and that's fine. But it's not thought to be possible to, as I say, present that report and answer the questions that you're likely to have without referring to and including information that's included in the private part of the meeting. So my advice to the Chair is that instead of taking number 11 chronologically, if you move to the private part of the agenda and consider it as one item then.
Councillor Huxtable.
Thank you, Chair. I'm supportive of the suggestion from Dan. However, if we're going to do that, and I'm assuming that we have to come to a decision today on it, that we allow sufficient time for your 3 o'clock cut-off, as outlined a couple of minutes ago, for debate and discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Before I bring Dan back in, one of the issues that the Labour group have is that they really haven't had time to study the thing properly. So the big question then is it time critical? No?
So yes, with the sort of hard stop at 3, so to speak, and I think the Chair alluded to this a little bit earlier, any items that have not been considered, we would look to arrange an additional meeting, a continuation of this meeting effectively at short notice, which practically means next week or within short notice of that. And those agenda items that haven't been considered, if that includes this item, would go to that subsequent meeting. But that would be a matter as how the meeting progressed and whether there was sufficient time to consider it from the Chairs and the committee's opinion.
Sorry, Chair. I think the answer the question I'm asking is it time critical? Does it have to be discussed and a recommendation agreed today? Or if we got to 3:30 and we haven't come to that item agenda, could we defer it to a future meeting?
No, the outcome, the proposals are time critical in terms of they are to support proposals around bus service registrations that are going to take place over the course of the next couple of weeks, or bus service deregistration. So it's an important topic. So if it was that it couldn't be concluded and decided upon today, we would be looking for some form of urgent reconvening of discussions. And just to aid the point, what we have prepared for members is, given that this is an apologies that there was a late send out on this, and the reason for that will hopefully be clear either from the paper or from the subsequent information to be provided. We have also prepared some short slides just to give a flavour and overview if members decide that they would like to hear that this afternoon as well, when that item is under consideration, just to aid the process along.
Okay, if we were to say something like, we will consider other business up until 2:30 and then devote half an hour to this in private, then I think we will end up doing an adjourned meeting for the rest of the business probably.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Right. Minutes. Item 4, accuracy. Any issues with the accuracy? Thank you. Matters arising. Any matters arising? Carol?
I just wanted to point out that at the end of meeting last time, thank you. At the end of our meeting last time, I raised concern because there was money in the budget to advertise public transport, but at that time we didn't know what the budget would be going forward after Christmas. It was with much relief, therefore, that I found out that we did have more money coming from the government, and that we wouldn't have been in the position where we had advertised people an increased demand for public transport, and we're in fact possibly faced with the possibility of cutting back services. I would like that to have been minuted, please, because we need joined up thinking. We need long-term strategies, and I would just like it minuted that we were in that position temporarily. Thank goodness now we're not.
Any comment, officers? Is there any issue with, is it on this? No?
No.
No, okay. Can that be included? Thank you. I've got Councillor Stanley, then Councillor Huxley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I refer to page 10 from the top of, where it's asking for a briefing note for members concerning and related to Dudley Interchange. I think that may have been what you already spoken to me earlier on today about arranging a meeting. If that's the case, I'm quite happy to accept the comments we made previously.
Just by way of response, I am keen for us, all TDC members that are interested and available, to come to Dudley and take a look at progress and issues, exactly as we discussed previously. So I'll do that as a separate site visit item, if you like.
Thank you very much.
If I may, Chair, just sorry on the Dudley Interchange point. We did a briefing with Councillor Anne Millward a few weeks ago, so we will share that briefing pack with TDC.
Thank you. Councillor Huxley.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, can I thank, because I'm pretty sure this has happened, Pete, for sharing the dedicated email address to relay issues and concerns, and I propose that that's discharged now. The Park and Ride item, after discussion with me, it was agreed to defer that to the November meeting, so I'm happy with that. They're both on page 9. I think Councillor Grinsell wants to come in on one issue on page 10. Have we had a copy of those 7 sprint routes from Angela, Chair? Thank you.
I don't think so. Could that be followed up, please? On me? Yes, okay. Officers, any response to the issues that Councillor Ox was raised?
No, just thank yous.
Okay. Councillor Grinsell.
Thank you, Chair. On exactly the opposite, I just want to thank Sandeep for providing me with the KSI data. Thank you.
Anything further? Action log. Matters arising. Action log. Carol, did you want?
No, that's been done, thank you.
Sorry, you've done it? Okay. forward plan. Members,
Is that our forward work plan?
it's item 6 on my agenda, forward plan.
We're happy with it, Chair.
Yeah.
This morning we were told about changes to the bus service on demand, and I wondered if in our forward plan, our work plan, we could include updates to the trial that's taking place now in Coventry and Warwick, and to understand how it's progressing and its implications going forward.
Councillor Grinsell, you probably want to
I beg your
second
pardon,
that.
I was distracted. Could you just repeat that? I'm sorry, Chair.
Chair, no, if I could take that on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Yeah.
Yes, we would be fully, about the demand responsiveness of the bus services as outlined in the presentation this morning, fully supportive of that, and in particular how the trial is going around the Warsaw Common Berkswell area in terms of demand responsive transport, especially given where we are in subsidised bus services. So yes, fully supportive of that, Chair.
So officers, we need to know when would be an appropriate moment to consider how these proposals are developing and what the experience in Coventry is and what the solidarity issues are.
Because I know that Bob and myself have been lobbied by local ward councillors in the Meriden ward, in particular councillors Howe, DeSico and Borough, about demand responsive transport and how it's working in that ward.
Can I suggest, Chair, that it's included in the bus report that's due to report to this group on the 14th of November?
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Anything further on forward plan?
Just having made those comments to Pete about the park and ride being in November, it's not actually in the forward plan, but I know Pete had that one under control.
Already noted.
Okay. So item 7, Councillor Akhtar, would you like to introduce this and then number 8 as well?
Yeah,
Afterwards.
Chair, I'll do my best to be quick because we are running out of time. Chair, this is the financial monitoring report, reporting year-to-date income and expenditure up to 31st August 2022. Key points to note from the reports are the year-to-date revenue position to 31st August 2022 reflects an overall favourable position of £1.4 million. The key variances for this are, as reported last month, saving in the concession budget partly offset by lower than budgeted use of reserves year to date to support the overall budget, as these have not yet been required. As noted in the previous report to the committee, the full year revenue position now reflects the increase in operating costs of West Midlands Metro resulting from the unprecedented rise in energy prices and reduced revenue and grant funding as a result of the service suspension in the first quarter of the year. These have been offset by local transport fund grant income of £1.8 million and non-paid savings. As to capital budget, the Transport for West Midlands capital programme budget for the full year totals £441 million. The Transport Capital Programme now includes the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement Programme. This is one of the most significant programs alongside the investment programme and Commonwealth Games. Overall year-to-date capital expenditure to the end of August is £102 million, which is £38.3 million behind year-to-date budget. The key variance is in the investment programme portfolio, which is £19.2 million behind year-to-date budget. The key drivers are Birmingham East Side Metro Extension, which is £4.8 million year to date, adverse to budget due to revised phasing up for utility works. Number 2, Rail Camp Hill line local enhancement, which is £6.1 million year to date variance, and Warsaw to Wolverhampton local enhancements, which is £1.5 million year to date variance due to rephasing of construction activity. As to Commonwealth Games programs, includes all the schemes scheduled to be delivered in advance of the Games in July and August 2022. At 31st August, this program is £14.2 million under budget. The main driver is sprint schemes, which are £5.7 million behind budget due to timing of payments to contractors. University Station is £4.6 million behind budget. Paribas Station is £2.3 million behind budget due to some work now planned to take place over August to October. Other major works is £3.1 million below the budget, driven by future mobility zone projects. The most significant variants are in relation to the Transport Network Data Project and Coventry Electric Bus City, which are both £1.3 million behind budget year to date. Crest's full year forecast shows a £31.5 million variance to budget. The budget will be rebased as a part of the Q2 forecast based on updated information provided by project sponsors. As to minor works and grants to local authority program, remains largely in line with budget with no significant project variances to report. And with that, I hand over to Kate.
Nothing further to add to that. Obviously, we have to take any questions.
I wondered if it would be possible for you to unpack Appendix 4, the Dudley Interchange. And it's the obvious one to ask a question about, really, and I wondered if you could explain.
I'm sure much of this is picked up within Sandy's capital programme monitoring. What I will just say about the finance, this is obviously a 1 year view, so it's the in-year of a multi-year programme. So it is okay for projects to overspend within the financial year in which we're looking at, as long as the whole life cost and budget of that programme is not overspending.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. So I'm just making sure I'm looking at the same line within that. So variance number that we are showing there.
514.
Oh, is that shown as
514.
Okay, so that's in year, and that is to do with the way in which the work programme is coming forward. So we have an approved budget of just over £24 million for that overall scheme, which is for the life of the project, and that was approved by the Combined Authority Board in February 2021. So that is the basis on which we are working. So what this is showing is a variance within the in-year forecasting and overspend based on the work that's been done so far. There has been some additional work done as a result of the CPO, the compulsory purchase order process that we've had to enter into with Dudley Council for acquiring the land, but also doing some of the work around the detailed design, which we are now commissioning. And when I do circulate the pack, which was shared with Councillor Anne Millwood around a briefing, that will have more details around the overall progress of that project. There is a summary in the next paper as well on the capital programme.
Please, can I ask as well, when you have a significant overspend like that, where do you take that money from? Do you take it from other projects that have underspent? How is it?
No, because it is within that £24 million project budget, so we don't need to take it from anywhere else. It is within the approved budget for that overall project, so we don't have to take it from anywhere else. The only point where we have to make those considerations would be if there is a risk to the overall project budget.
Anything further? Councillor Acton?
Chair, can I ask Kate, please, is it possible, because most of these projects are over a long period of time on the, as Sandeep said, multi-year projects. Is it possible we can, somehow highlight these projects somewhere so we don't get confused? If we see, in first year, they are overspent or underspent?
We can certainly look at how it, and a lot of that will come from the budget when we take you through the budget, and it tells that story through the budget picture. So we'll have a look at how we do that.
Can I just say that's particularly important because when the risks are colour coded, the Dudley Interchange is red amber, which so immediately you flagged up that there are some concerns there. So to be able to put those concerns in a broader context is really quite important when you're trying to understand, the responsibility that we've got to make sure that things are on track and progressing.
And I think that's what Sandy's report tends to look at, that whole life. For the financial monitoring report, it is for monitoring the in-year financial position to support you in the in-year financial monitoring.
Anything further on this?
Well, it's merely a suggestion, and I haven't discussed this with Councillor Stanley, but given the critical nature of the Dudley Interchange for the whole of the Black Country, would it be worth that being a briefing discussion for a future morning of TDC?
I think that's a good idea.
Happy to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything further? We've got a recommendation, two items there to note the report. Do I agree? Great, thank you. On to item 8, Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I would like to present to the committee the Capital Programme Delivery Monitoring Report. The committee is recommended to note achievements since the March meeting of the Transport Delivery Committee, to know the progress of deliverable and outturn of the 2021-22 capital programme, to note where indicated any variations from the baseline programme. There has been a good progress made with a number of key milestones being met. It is also recognised that there is a lot of delivery activity taking place across the West Midlands and nationally. So we are keeping a close eye on the availability of resources and materials. The following achievements have been completed between July and September. Dudley Interchange, the tender process for appointing the design consultant to progress the detailed design in readiness for a build-only contractor has formally closed, with submission being evaluated. The full planning application has now been submitted and was granted permission at D and BC Planning Committee. Making the key route network safer, contract has been awarded to support local authorities' applications to secure the required designation order, and the project will commence in September for the periods of 12 months. As to Paribas Rail Station and Bus Interchange, both the station and bus interchange operated as planned during Commonwealth Games. No issues were reported, and positive feedback was received from operators and passengers. Subway infill works were completed ahead of programme. Footbridge parapet painting is also complete. As to digital panel rollout, positive progress continues with a list of 22 shelters that have planning provided for digital advertising provided by Clear Channel. The committee should know the following exception during the reporting period: University Station, revision to opening date following a review of the programme due a number of industry-wide challenges. I will hand over to Sandeep to pick out further details and take any questions. But Chair, with your permission, I just want to bring it to Sandeep's attention. They said on DCA, when we see amber and red, we slightly get frightened, and especially University Station is all red. Can you please explain that?
Thank you, Councillor, for the introduction. So the standard methodology we use for the delivery competence assessments are based generally on time programming delay. So with University Station now, that is a delay of a number of months, which will automatically move the DCA to a red. And there are obviously a number of mitigating factors which we can touch on now. I'm sure Malcolm will be picking up in his rail programme report later. But again, just picking up the point that was made by Councillor earlier as well around Dudley Interchange, where it's an amber red. These are based on the likelihood, or first of all, an assessment of the risks and the likelihood that they may be realised and what we then need to do to mitigate against them. We are still working through the compulsory purchase orders for Dudley, which is why there is an amber stroke red risk on that, because until that point, the land is not secure to build the new interchange building. So we constantly review those DCA assessments based on the progress that is being made, and we will apply a standard set of factors to what rating that they should have for the reporting that comes to the committee. The only other point that I wanted to pick up, because Councillor Akhtar has picked up most of the key items, is, as I discussed at the last TDC, is that we will be looking to revise the way in which we provide the monitoring reports to TDC in the future, to make them more inclusive of other programmes such as CRSTS and the various other funding packages that we have. The report that comes here was traditionally done primarily for schemes which were funded through the integrated transport block, but we know that we have moved on in terms of other funding sources and mechanisms now. So we are very keen that we bring a fuller and more detailed monitoring report for the committee, and we would like to work with you on making sure that we get that reporting format right and something that works for you, and something that we do consistently across a range of other boards and committees as well.
More generally, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Chair Councillor Akhtar has picked out the key points in his introduction to the paper.
Members? Councillor Stanley?
Yeah, very briefly, yeah, Mr. Chairman. As far as Dudley is concerned, what the main stumbling block we have at the present moment, yes, planning permission has been granted for this to take place, but we are still short of one particular property, which is now subject to a compulsory purchase order being served on to acquire it.
Thank you, and on that point, I hope that that specific issue would be covered by the briefing in November rather than go into it today. I was going to raise the issue of number 7 and network park and ride expansion developments, and I would hope that following the item on the agenda in November, we can actually make some progress with that, given what we've heard of the last rail and metro MEG in terms of a plan going forward for park and ride, especially now that Babs Coombs is actually back, and so we can make some progress on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Anything further, members? I've got one item 8, parochial one. Why is Warsaw Town Centric Interchange Feasibility Study on hold?
So this is a long-standing project that we have been working with Warsaw on in the past. If you recall, Chair, there were proposals some time ago around expanding Bradford Place as a standalone bus interchange in Warsaw Town Centre. It went through a public inquiry in 2019 with the Town Centre Master Plan. Since then, there has been further work required to make sure that we do not take forward something which stands in isolation to the wider regeneration proposals of Warsaw Town Centre. So we have effectively, whilst we have been continuing to engage with Warsaw, that work, to be fair, has probably been a bit slower than all of us would have liked, due to other priorities, particularly around pulling together our CRSTS programmes, etc., over the past 12 months or so. But it is something that we will continue to work on, and it does come back to the wider regeneration proposals of Warsaw Town Centre, making sure that we are doing the right intervention. And if okay with you, Chair, I will bring back at least a verbal update at the next TDC on following conversations with Warsaw officers.
Thank you. Can I refer people to 4, please? Because that is something that under recommendation 4 we would need to endorse. That's the approach to future reporting arrangements. I note in your last sentence that officers will work with TDC members on developing an appropriate reporting format over the coming months. Do I take that would be the finance member engagement, or how's that going to work?
Again, I think we are open to suggestions. I think that the initial point of contact would be through Councillor Akhtar and using him as a conduit in, but I think we want to make it a bit broader than that to make sure that we get the reporting structure right for TDC members in this committee in particular, and make sure it provides the level of information that is required for a range of projects and programmes.
Yes.
Just to add that the CRSTS programme, £1.2 billion worth of investment in transport, isn't just transport for West Midlands schemes, it also covers schemes that are delivered by the local authorities as well. The Combined Authority is the accountable body, and it's really a question for TDC as well to have visibility of the delivery of that whole programme. And I'm in discussions with transport colleagues at each of the local authorities on how TDC gets more involved in the broader delivery now that CRSTS is, is 8 authorities, if you include TFWM as one of those, alongside the 7 local authorities as well. So that's something that we will be looking into as part of the development of how we report going forward as well.
So when do we get to know?
We are working with our colleagues who are overseeing the CRSTS programme from a technical point of view as well around the types and level of information that we will want to see in that reporting. And the key element here is trying to get some consistency in the way that we report this across a range of different forums and boards. So there is an element of technical work going on in the background in terms of how we collect that information and integrate it in a consistent way. And then it will be conversations with, initially with Councillor Akhtar on how we present that back to this committee.
Thank you. So, is there anything further on this report? Can I move the recommendations as set out? Great, thank you. Thank you, Sandeep. I've been asked whether we could switch item 10, is it, to be considered next, and then the rail report would follow. There's a reason for that. Pete, did you want to say anything?
Thank you, members. I know this report is due to be considered today. I'm joined by Steve Hayes on the screen, who unfortunately has to be at another urgent meeting at 2 p.m. So thank you, members, for considering it.
Okay. So, Steve, are you presenting this? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, thanks. Hello, everyone, and apologies for not being able to be there in person today. This report is to provide an update on the delivery of our West Midlands Bus Service Improvement Plan, and there's a few recommendations, including endorsing the next iteration of our enhanced partnership, endorsing the approach to take on bus registration powers, and endorsing the revocation of the advanced partnership schemes in Wolverhampton and Solihull for reasons which I'll explain in a moment. So in 2021, the government launched its national bus strategy and required all local authorities to develop bus service improvement plans in response to that strategy. That was essentially a bidding document, and we submitted ours about this time last year, actually. and the government then assessed them all, and we were one of the authorities, one of only a handful of authorities actually, awarded funding to deliver our BSIP, which was great news, and we were awarded just shy of £88 million. A few months ago, that was confirmed by government, and they announced that we will be paid that funding over 3 years. So that's £18 million this year, £37 million next financial year, and £33 million in 24-25. In order to deliver the bus service improvement plan, we are required to advise the government how we intend to do that, and we've got a long history of working in partnership here in the West Midlands, so enhanced partnership was our preferred approach, but of course we also advise the government that we are still assessing our powers under the Bus Services Act as well, and have undertaken the outline franchising assessment. But in terms of delivering the BSIP, it's very much enhanced partnership. So the enhanced partnership that you're being asked to endorse today includes a number of deliverables that we are required to demonstrate to government we will be taking forward as part of our BSIP. So just to summarise a few of those, so we'll be maintaining the Regional Traffic Control Centre and developing that to support bus operators to ensure they maintain reliable and punctual services. It puts into writing all of the extensive bus priority schemes that are being funded through our CRSTS programme, and it also talks about how we'll be developing a process with operators to ensure that any savings from any bus priority are reinvested into the network. It includes a commitment to develop a passenger charter with operators. It includes funding for 9 additional transport safety officers on the network. It includes commitments from operators that all bus services will be Euro 6, so that virtually eliminates emissions entirely. By the end of May next year, we'll be the first authority to do that outside of London. And it also sets into writing the commitment that Coventry will be a fully electric city by the end of 2025, using the funding we've got for Coventry Electric City. And there is also funding, extensive funding for a bus passenger incentive scheme. So all of those are included within the BSIP and the enhanced partnership that you're being asked to endorse today. Each of the 7 districts are also being asked to support this, and subject to it being agreed, this will go to the operators for confirmation in a couple of weeks' time. There's a number of practical other things we need to consider as well in terms of this work. There's a amount of funding for fares freezes, and of course last week we saw National Express commit to freezing their fares over the next few years, which is really good news. All operators have committed to that as well. But as well as this comes a fare simplification, which we're calling the Bonfire Bus Tickets. At the moment, all bus operators have their own suites of tickets, and what we are proposing to do is reduce the premium on the NBus multi-operator ticket, such that it is the same price as operators' own tickets, and that will lead to a much simpler approach to ticketing across the region, which we think will generate significant patronage. But we do understand this might have implications on the stability of the network, so we'll be working with operators over the next couple of months to put processes in place to manage any unintended consequences of that. We will also be working to take on board the registration powers from the Traffic Commissioner. So at the moment, any change to a bus service, any service withdrawal, any new service needs to go to the Traffic Commissioner's offices in Leeds, where they'll assess the registration and decide whether it meets any local requirements or not. Obviously, that's 100 miles away. They're not cognizant of all of the detail of our network here. So it's our proposal to take on board those powers, such we can make more local decisions about which services are running and whether or not they're compliant with all the obligations that are placed on operators through the enhanced partnership. So we're also looking for your endorsement to take on those powers today, and there's quite a detailed note in the pack regarding how we propose to do that. And finally, as a sort of matter of detail, at the moment, Wolverhampton City Centre and Solihull Town Centre are covered by advanced quality partnerships. This is another piece of legislation that required operators to meet obligations in return for investment from local authorities. It's not possible to have a geographical area covered by both an advanced partnership and an enhanced partnership. Don't blame me for the legislation. So in order to ensure that the enhanced partnership covers the whole region, we need to revoke the advanced partnerships in Wolverhampton and Solihull, but I assure you that isn't any worsening of the commitments there. In fact, there's actually additional commitments as part of that process. So hopefully that's been a helpful overview of what's in our VSIP, the fact we've got £88 million of funding to deliver it, and the practical steps we'll be taking to deliver that. In terms of the detail around the Bonfire Tickets and ensuring network stability as a result of that, we'll be further updating the enhanced partnership, but we'll be bringing that to a future committee. So this is version 2 of the enhanced partnership, which we're asking you to endorse today. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Questions? Councillor Stanley, then Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like all of us sitting around the table today, this is a wonderful thing to put into operation, and a lot of work gone into it. Sadly, once again, I've got the fear we're let down again with our principal operator by constantly making the same excuse, I haven't got the drivers to provide the buses, and this is what is happening. It's causing me a headache in Dudley, where people are having to stand for an hour and a half. I've myself quite recently for a 10-minute service for over an hour because it's so badly run. If we need to put this into practice, then we need an operator that we can actually count on to supply the service for us, and a good service for the whole of the West Midlands, and not this excuse that we're getting, we haven't got the drivers, It's turning passengers away, and it's not acceptable. And I really think we should look at that particular operator and say to them, look, if you want to keep the job, then you need to provide the service we expect of you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Locke.
I can agree with that to a point, because I'm getting the same complaints from residents and people across my ward and other parts of the city. My question is the announcement about the tickets freeze last week. I don't think I got anything as a member of the Transport Delivery Committee. I saw it more on social media, which is very good, but it would, as a member, I think we all ought to, get notice of the good news like that so we can circulate it round.
Councillor Sim.
Thank you. My first question is about the fares, the simplifying of the different fare rates, because it also says that they're going to be cheaper as a whole, but I just wanted assurances that in simplifying and reducing the number of fares that are available, that we're not cutting off the bottom. So, like saying, for example, the £1.50 ticket that's a short hop into the city centre, we're not losing those particular cheaper tickets, and then just saying overall it's cheaper, but actually for something it's going to be more expensive. The second one is about our relations with the staff on the buses. So we've got strikes happening on the rail at the minute. We've got strikes coming up on the tram. I'd like to know that we are taking steps to avoid industrial action from the staff for the bus operators. If there's anything that we can do to intervene at this point, if there are no negotiations happening, any positive impact that we can make.
Steve, are you okay to take more, or do you want to respond to those now?
I think, well, what I will do is some of those are related to more operational matters. So if you don't mind, I might pass those over to sort of Peter or John, who I know are very cognizant of some of those issues and actively working on them at the moment. So is that okay, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want us to pick those up first?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, with regards to the driver issues that were referred to, and I know from the level of complaints that we're seeing from across the conurbation, this is an issue. The driver issue isn't one just here in the West Midlands, it is in other places as well. However, one of the things that we are doing is talking to not only National Express, so through the Combined Authority, we've been looking at whether there's any programmes, any assistance that can help bring additional drivers in. However, it's not just about drivers coming in, it's also about retention of those drivers that are still working in the network and making sure that they're not falling out of the network and going to take employment at other places as well. I think with regards to the comments, that links to the comments around discussions around industrial relations and other items. We know from our major operator that there have been ongoing discussions around paying deals for paying conditions, which aren't just about funding and money, they're also about the conditions of employment, they're also about hours of working week, shifts, shift time, shift patterns, etc., and whether things can be done to make it a more attractive place for people to come and work. I think our concerns, we equally are looking to put pressure where we can on our operators to be supporting this change. We think it's probably the biggest challenge for staff that certainly and staffing levels that we can recall seeing. We know it's not isolated to the bus industry, but what we are trying to do is make sure that working with those partners that we can see that all actions that they can take are being taken. This isn't just as well about what we can do here. We're also trying to work with the Department for Transport at a national level to understand what are the areas of help and assistance that can be brought in by government and government intervention, because we know that this isn't an issue that just relates to West Midlands buses, it relates to other places. I think at the moment we do feel that probably the conversations around that are more being held and driven between representatives of government with the operators directly. So we are trying to ensure that we can get involved in those discussions and conversations and see where and what we have value to add. I hope that's picked up some of the points.
Steve, can I ask you to respond, because you've got 5 minutes before you need to disappear?
Yes, well, I was just going to. I think that the ticketing one is probably the one that I can respond to. So yes, absolutely. We are aware that there are a number of discounted ticket products, and any new ticketing structures we introduce will definitely seek to protect those. We are looking to make bus travel more affordable, not less affordable. So we're working with operators to make sure that any sort of discounted products remain. The key thing that we're looking to do is remove the premium on the multi-operator ticket, such that it's the same price operator's own ticket. So that will be a real reduction. I should add as well that we don't have any say over operators' single tickets. So in a deregulated market, operators are free to set their own ticket prices. We have good dialogue with the Competitions Markets Authority regularly, actually, and they've made it very clear that operators' single tickets are what they are, and we can't actively document what they will be in this document. But we, as I say, we'd have a close relationship with operators, and we'll work with them to make sure that bus travel is more affordable and a better offer for passengers.
Thank you. Members, anything further for Steve before he disappears?
Yeah. Steve, so we don't have powers to determine the routes, the fare prices, and the frequencies under enhanced partnership.
No, that's right. So we can set minimum standards on certain routes. So in terms of the quality of the vehicles that operate on routes, we can specify what those are. But it is a partnership that needs to be agreed with operators. We can't determine that unilaterally, and we can set maximum frequencies on corridors, and we may well be looking to do that. So, for example, 50, where there are a dozen buses an hour or more, we can say actually there's enough buses on there. We don't want any further operators on there. What we can't do is set minimum frequencies. So we can't compel an operator to run a service that they don't wish to run. That's when we come into the realms of bus subsidy, and we have to go out to tender and appoint an operator that way. So whilst we understand there is some cross subsidy in the market where operators do run some loss-making services which are funded by the more profitable services, we don't have any control over those.
Tim, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I suppose I should make a declaration of interest, is that while I'm not a formal member of the Bus Alliance, I am there to substitute on behalf of the elected mayor when he can't make it. I think there's a lot of positives in this report. I do like some of the innovative proposals that we're proposing. So, for example, the cross-city bus routes, which I think will, once they're brought back across the West Midlands, will make a significant difference, rather than all the services that are going into the city centre actually stopping in the city centre. So to provide that additional connectivity, those additional through routes. I'm very interested, as I've mentioned at Bus Alliance meetings, about the Sutton Bus Gateway proposals, which I think are very much to be welcomed. And I believe there's been some good news on that in the last couple of weeks. And also where effectively station travel planning in conjunction with the bus services and the pilot project at Solihull railway station with the buses, and provide that integration, that connectivity between different modes of travel, and to evaluate the pilot and to see how we can roll it out further. And in terms of the bus vehicles themselves, we've already mentioned the electric buses. I think the city commentary, obviously the hydrogen buses, the SEBRA funding that we've granted, and the 2 sprint routes that are operational, and the further 5 sprint routes that are prioritised within the West Midlands. So there's a lot of positives in the report. The only caveat, as expressed by other members, is delivery. It's a great report. It has a lot of positives, but we've got to see it absolutely implemented on the ground. And the key to that is driver recruitment and retainment. And I think that's a challenge for all the bus operators in the West Midlands. But it's got to be something that bus operators need to get their head around. But I'm very comfortable with the idea of partnership with the bus operating companies. And I think we're doing some excellent work here in the West Midlands, and the Bus Alliance in particular is a leader in how that partnership activity should work. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are we okay to let Steve go? Yes. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. There is a need for a formal decision to say that you endorse the actions. Just to confirm that.
We were going to do that without you.
Thank you. Just checking. Thanks, everybody.
Members, are you ready to take a vote on these recommendations? Are you?
I just want to ask Pete. Yeah, okay. You know what he said.
Go on,
Pete. I'm sorry, sir, but you can see the concern from councillors regarding, the buses not turning up, and the excuse is the drivers. Okay, we hear what you say, but that doesn't resolve the problem. This is going on for a very long time now, and we get it in the neck. And most of the time, most of the buses, believe me, are late. And sometimes they're not turning up altogether. And so we used to have the National Express and state coach operators here in our meetings, and we don't see them anymore here. Okay. But they're not here to answer the question. They are.
Pervez, I've asked Pete. I've advised him that I will respond. I think it's really important for an early get-together with the principal bus operators to talk through these problems. So if you're content with that, and I include you, obviously, anybody who uses the buses knows that it's worse than it's ever been at the moment, right? And I don't know if it's excuses or what. I would say there's a grim reality out there. So would you be happy to just agree to have a session ASAP?
Yes.
What do you want?
Thank you, Chair. If you look at page 10 of the agenda pack, you will see as the last action tracker point, a morning briefing to be arranged whereby National Express are invited to discuss bus performance with members. And the officer responsible, I believe, is John Hayes.
I just come in on that because that was actually planned. And National Express had agreed to that, but unfortunately, when we had to change the meeting schedule, because when we had the passing of the late Majesty, it was postponed. National Express also did offer to be here in a more formal capacity today, but we advised, based on timing and because that was on plan, that we would do that at a future session.
So, do you want Steve's younger brother to answer as well?
Well, all I will say is that I fully trust John to organise such a briefing in his normal, efficient manner.
Ooh. It's in the post. Members, are you happy with us? Oh, yes, carry on.
Right. One of the reasons why we're short of bus drivers is because they don't feel safe. I noticed that we've got 9 additional TCSOs to improve safety and security across the network. Can I make a plea that they don't finish at 5 o'clock? Because one of the things that have been drawn to my attention is that gangs know on which routes there's going to be no security, and they know that they clock off at 5 o'clock on some routes. We need to think smart, really.
Noted, I think one point, just if I may, just as a quick response to that is flag. Also, don't forget that TSOs are one part of the wider safe travel police team mechanism. They are not all of it, and actually part of that is also about making sure that we use the resource right across, which also includes PCSOs, inspectors, officers across that team. So it is a broader team, and it is about making sure that from that intelligence and information we are able to respond to all of those, and that won't be on a 9 to 5 basis. That is on a 7 days a week basis.
And it's a good one for the discussion we're going to have very soon.
Yes.
Organised by John. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes.
I think it's pertinent to suggest that what we discussed earlier about a membership visit to the Safer Travel Suite here.
Yes.
I had the opportunity to visit it quite recently, just after the Commonwealth Games, and whilst I accept what your comment about bus drivers feeling unsafe, but if you were to see firsthand what happens upstairs on the 5th floor at the Safer Travel Suite, you would be absolutely staggered at the coverage that we have got throughout the Combined Authority. And if I'm able to organise that visit, then you will be the first to be invited.
Thank you, that's helpful. Now then, you lot, are you ready to decide what you want to do about these recommendations?
Agreed?
Agreed.
Everybody agree? Thank God for that.
As long as we focus on delivery.
Okay, so now it's rail. Back to rail. Programme update. Do you want to introduce this?
I'm more than happy to introduce it. This paper was presented at a sneaky member engagement group meeting that we managed to fit in at the end of September, and thank you very much to Malcolm for making sure that actually happened. Basically to focus on the rail programme update and the investment of the 7 stations happening across the West Midlands. And of the 7 stations, 5 are new builds, and I'll come to those in a second, and 2 are upgrades. We've heard a bit about in the capital delivery report about what's happened at Perry Bar and how it was opened in time for the Commonwealth Games and proved to be an enormous asset to the Commonwealth Games, and indeed members were able to do a site visit to Perry Bar just before the Commonwealth Games, and I thought that was very well received. The second upgraded station is University, and while, as we've heard, there are problems with the delivery of the entire programme, sufficient progress was made for it to be acting as a properly functioning station in time for all the Commonwealth Games activities happening around the university. And again, there were no significant issues in terms of the Commonwealth Games, and both stations will leave a tremendous rail legacy as a result of the Commonwealth Games for the benefit of the West Midlands going forward, not only in terms of access to sporting venues, but also to support economic growth and housing issues in and around those railway stations. In terms of the new stations, they can be divided into package 1 stations along the Warsaw to Wolverhampton line, and package 2 stations along a reopened Camphill line. So package 1 are the stations at Willenhall and Darlaston. Package 2 are those of Moseley Village, Kinsey and Pineapple Road. If you're not, for members who don't know where Pineapple Road is, it's Sturchley and or Hazelwell and partly within Councillor Locke's ward of Sturchley. So we had an update on all those proposals. You will have seen from earlier on in the agenda progress relating to budget on all of those. I don't propose to go through the details of the report. It's there in literally black and white. We also discussed in terms of our progress, what we can do in terms of future stations going forward. Malcolm's just about to win Diary Bingo or Huxtable Bingo when I mentioned Kings Norton. And when we have the package 2 stations, they will connect to Kings Norton Railway Station. We need to reopen the middle platform. We need to get Network Rail's agreement in terms of signalling and tracks reconfiguration to enable that to happen, and to look at those Camphill services going down to Longbridge. We also need to look at the infrastructure needed at Camphill Court or Bordesley Court, call them what you will, in order to take them into Moore Street and Snow Hill Station. And talking about Snow Hill Station, we need to make progress through Midlands Connect in terms of the reopening of Platform 4. And I know that's playing a significant part in the rail team's thinking, both from Transport for West Midlands, from the West Midlands Rail Executive, and as I say, Midlands Connect. And transport is always there as a means to encourage and support economic growth and development. And we have to work in terms of all the economic growth development zones, the investment zones, the enterprise zone in Eastside, so that people, especially from disadvantaged communities, have access to jobs and growth. And in terms of house building needs, we can put them around these new package of railway stations, so there's a viable, sustainable transport alternative for them to access not just those jobs and growth, but also in terms of cultural activities, leisure, etc., etc. I hope that generally covers it, but any gaps, I'm sure Malcolm will fill them. Thank you, Chair.
Malcolm. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Huxtable. You be my deputy. You did a fantastic job with introducing that and left me very little to say. I probably wouldn't have mentioned Kings Norton, but I knew I could rely on you to do so. A couple of things I will add, if I may. University was brought up during the capital programme monitoring report, so I think it's worth me just reflecting a little bit more on what's happened at university. A couple of drivers as to why that project is later being delivered than we'd intended it to. The first of those Tim's already referred to, which was delivering an element of the scheme for the Commonwealth Games. So the delivery of the scheme was split into two, with the wider platforms and the new canopies, and the external public realm being delivered in time for the Commonwealth Games to provide extra capacity. And it was certainly used during the Games as well. I was at the station last week during the evening peak, so not during Games time, but the evening peak, and it was even this short a time after the wider platforms opened. It's difficult to believe quite how he managed with the old platforms and the width that they used to be. So they're already delivering results, which is really positive. The downside of that was that the focus then on delivering it in a two-stage way, and inevitably the focus was on delivering the first phase in time for the Commonwealth Games, which left quite a lot to be done for the second stage. Now, the station itself should have been completed, albeit not open, in time for the Commonwealth Games, but a combination of factors meant that wasn't possible. So the two-phase approach to it was the main driver, but then there's been a number of supply chain challenges that have also been problematic. One of those is that a key subcontractor became insolvent, so could no longer supply the materials they were intended to supply, and they're bespoke materials for the design of the stations. They've had to be re-procured by our principal contractor, and it's a critical path item. It holds back other work if those materials aren't available. And on top of that, there are a number of assumptions that were built into the two-stage approach to delivery
with regards to the site supply chain that proved to be unrealistic. So that's what led to the challenges in construction there, which has meant that the opening will be pushed back to spring next year. We're expecting the construction to be complete around about the end of this year, then leading to the testing and commissioning work and the entry into service, sort of complex paperwork elements that need to be undertaken in order to satisfy the office of Rowland Road. So that's university. On the new stations, Willenhall and Darlaston are proving the most problematic in terms of risk. We've got a number of historic mining activities which are proving more problematic than we'd hoped. There's a number of undiscovered or previously unrecorded mine shafts that we are now discovering, which is adding complication to the remediation of the land. And then on top of that, we've had some land acquisition issues that's meant us resorting to compulsory purchase. Although there's an interesting aside there, we've been the first combined authority in the country to actually use our compulsory purchase powers, which has been an interesting process. But that's being drawn to a close now, which is positive. The final thing I'll mention is that the reference in the report to learning lessons. And we've learned a hell of a lot in undertaking the rail programme over the last 3 or 4 years. And we've just recently had an external peer review by Network Rail into package 2, into the Camp Hill line stations, which has been really, really helpful and insightful. And then Perry Bar, which is a project which is now nigh on completed, bar the sort of final tidying up. As we speak today, actually on the 5th floor, there's a meeting taking place to learn the lessons of Perry Bar so that we can apply those to other projects. So it's worth making a point that we are seeking proactively to learn lessons from the projects that we've delivered, as well as those that are in line. Chair, I'll leave it there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the update on rail. I'm obviously going to mention Camp Hill line. I found that the officers, Hayley, Bradbury, and the construction people, the contractors are excellent to work with. I had a number of public meetings or Teams meetings when back in the lockdown and everything to update residents. And next week on Wednesday the 19th, I'm losing track of dates and everything, but Wednesday the 19th we've got an open day at one of the churches nearby, the church hall I should say, and for a drop-in session for residents for questions and things. So hopefully regular talking and meeting the people and passengers is very popular and people are looking forward to it. So fair play so far. Yeah.
Councillor
Sorry, I forgot to say, and this is a very important point, is that any lessons learned, we hope for there to be an 8th new station, a 6th new station, I would say, and that's at Aldridge. And any lessons learned from any of the package 1 and package 2 stations, we will apply to Aldridge, which of course is close to your heart in Warsaw, Chair.
Yeah, the real Labour supporters over there.
Rail supporters.
Sorry, Councillor Cunningham.
I was just going to ask you regarding the ramp that we had a discussion about at the Perry Bar site visit. Are you going to raise that, or do you want?
Say what you wish.
So we went on the site visit at Perry Bar station, and quite a few members noticed the ramp, which is now no longer being used, is obsolete. So that leaves people with disabilities or with pushchairs, the only option they have to get from the platform to street level is the lift. And there was also there were questions asked in terms of whether staff were available during all operational hours, if there were any issues in regards to the lift, if it broke down or anything, and that we were told that there aren't staff that are always available. So that leaves people with pushchairs and wheelchairs at a disadvantage if they want to use the rail service. So I just want to sort of highlight that concern and see if there's any
further progression in talks, because we did highlight that with the officer that was present at the time, in terms of any possibility of reinstating the ramp, which has now been made obsolete.
I'd like to respond to that, Chair. As long as you say yes. Only it was that simple. So as you rightly point out, Councillor, the ramp has been superseded by the addition of lifts which are more compliant with the ramps that they replaced. It's correct to say that the station isn't started at all times, but there is connectivity between the lifts and an external control centre in the event there's any problems with the lift. We're not currently funded to do anything further at Perry Bar. The work's done in terms of the work we'd intended to do, so there aren't any plans currently to reinstate the ramps.
So obviously, if it's not fully staffed, and I know you say it's connected to or via the control centre, doesn't that has an equalities impact in terms of people with, especially with disabilities, that might need to utilise a ramp or a lift? So that leaves them at a disadvantage. So how are we going to address that?
So I think what the best thing for me to do is to ask West Midlands Trains, who operate the station, to provide a note to this committee that sets out how they manage that, because it's the same circumstances at other stations as well. So I'll ask them to set out a note describing how they manage maintaining equalities in the event that equipment fails.
Can I propose, sorry, that is one of your lessons learned going forward, and also when you're looking at proposals for other stations as well, if that's a similar thing to set up in other stations?
Thank you. It's just a quick touch up from Councillor Cooley. If we've got a brand new station and we've already got rid of the ramp straight away, we're discriminating people with disabilities. So what I've noticed is we're only using buses are all right because they lower the station platform, so the people with disabilities can get onto the buses. But what about the rail network? Majority of the trains that I've been to do not have a ramp, so we're penalising our disadvantaged people who really need to use public transport more. So that's just, I want to just mention that. Thank you.
Are you referring there to getting on and off the train or access to the platform specifically?
Getting to the platform, because most of them will have steps, and they're very steep steps. And there are a couple of stations I've been to, I was thinking, if I wasn't steady on my feet and I looked at those stairs, there's no way I'd be using it. And then we have, I've seen some of the figures that we've had a low increase on people using public, especially on the trains, that they're not using it. So that's one of them, because we're discriminating them.
So we're relatively lucky in the West Midlands in the number of stations that are accessible, in the ability to get from the street, if you like, to the platforms. Perry Bar wasn't accessible prior to us doing this work because there was a step outside that prevented getting access, but it is now fully accessible because we've got rid of that step, having rebuilt the station and installed the lifts which are compliant with the relevant legal requirements. So we're in a reasonably good state. Now there's a number of stations in the region that remain that are completely inaccessible. There's now a couple less. Perry Bar, Smethwick, Rolfe Street has just recently had lifts installed as well, so that's now fully accessible where it wasn't before. But there are a number of others, such as Small Heath, one of the platforms at Four Oaks, Dudley Port, some notable examples that remain inaccessible, that need to be addressed as funding becomes available. For the next Network Rail control period, which is where the money comes from to deal with accessibility to stations, that funding period starts in 2024. There's been a list that we've been involved in the creation of, prioritising the remaining stations in the West Midlands to go into that competition to get funding. Stations such as Dudley Port, Small Heath are pretty high up in that list, and there are priorities now for addressing. I can provide further information to this committee if that would be helpful. Councillor Actel, then Councillor Huxley.
Malcolm, forgive me, maybe my memory is failing me, but in the past, when we had rail reports, it used to be performance And operational issues were discussed in this report is just rail program updates. Why is that?
I think if I recall, the next row of reports coming to the subsequent meeting will be on performance. This one was intended to be just around the rail programme. I can provide you with some headlines on rail performance if you like.
Thank you. Yes, in the forward programme on the 9th of Jan 2023, the rail delivery monitoring report is indeed to monitor the delivery of high-level deliverables and wider performance monitoring. To pick up that point, I'm assuming that Perry Bar and indeed university stations and all the stations in package 1 and package 2 would have to have gone through an equality impact assessment report. But I think also that the briefing note that Malcolm has promised should include what actually happened during the Commonwealth Games, because we had quite evidently a lot of visitors to Perry Bar Station, me included, when I went to the Alexander Stadium, and any issues that arose in particular during the Commonwealth Games with people with disabilities could be included in that, because as Councillor Cooner said, it was one thing that on the side visit we did observe and mention. So that would be very welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, happy to do that, and yes, I can confirm that all of our stations have that assessment and are compliant with the relevant legislation. We have to do that.
Can I just say, Malcolm, the whole problem with what happened at Perry Bar was I think nobody thought that it was important to retain the ramps, and the ramps were not compliant with current standards. Anybody knows, particularly users of the metro at St Chad's or Bilston, that lifts don't always work and people are stranded.
Yeah.
Now that's going to happen where ramps are got rid of, and that's what's happened. So I think the feeling of the site meeting was that, really speaking, we ought to be looking at reintroducing ramped access for when lifts break down, and the land on the city side of the station is, I think, owned by the city council. So the suggestion was that there should be discussions with the city council about their land and whether you could get a ramp in of the right gradient. And I think that physically, just because of the layout of the station, if you've got the land is there to do it, it's just, is it going to happen? And you say it's not in the plan. And that doesn't sound like progress to me. It sounds like a backward step. Yes. Clear. Sorry.
Seeing as we've gone back to the subject of ramps versus lifts, I used to commute to Birmingham 5 ways, which had a number of steps and a lift and no ramp. And I'm not physically disabled, but there have been times when I've had a twisted ankle or an injured knee or a swollen hip, and I've wanted to use the lift, but I've ended up taking the stairs because there's a queue for the lift during peak times when I'm travelling to go to and from work. You know, there's someone with a pushchair, there's someone with a bike, or there's someone with crutches, and it's, you know, four to six people deep, and if I were to wait, I'm going to be late for work, and I don't think that's a fair thing to put on people who have disabilities and are also working and have you know, time sensitive journeys to be making. And so, you know, can we have ramps as well as lifts? Do we have to have one or the other? Can we not just go with both and provide people with suitable access rather than just the most efficient one option?
Every station is different. I would suggest that if we put ramps at 5 ways, given its position in a cutting there, it would have taken you longer to get up the ramp, particularly with your ankle, than it would have been for waiting for the lift. So, I mean, it needs to take account of the specific sort of circumstances around the station, the available space, and of course the available funding to deliver all of those things, and to meet the requirements or modern requirements for accessibility with ramps can often mean, and it would mean at 5 ways and does at Perry Bar, exceptionally long ramps, which actually for many users is is a problem in itself. Although, you know, clearly if you have both, then there's a choice. I do get that.
Well, we've come to 2:30. So this report is for noting. Are members okay with that? Apart from the things we've raised.
Yeah.
Okay. Now then, what do we do about the rest of the agenda then? What we agreed was to adjourn what's left. I'm conscious that people have been sitting here waiting for their turn and might not get their turn now. I need a bit of help with this one. It's really important to get this private item done. So, yes, Anne, please help me.
Yeah. So item 14, we can defer.
Yeah.
To the next meeting. There's no time priority for that one. It'd be nice to be able to move forward on that, but we can defer on that one.
Yeah, okay.
I'm pleased to see that Teresa Stewart's name has been.
That's 14, that's tram naming it.
Okay. I think the walking and cycling monitoring report is an update, so we can take it as read. If there's any questions, we can deal with them offline maybe.
Correct. I'm happy to, if anybody wants to send me a question, I can try and answer.
Yeah. Okay, is that okay with you, Councillor Greenthorpe? Yeah.
What else have we got?
Metro monitoring delivery updates. We've got Michael here in the room.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
He's down.
He's down the bottom. So it really depends on what members want to do in terms of the Metro capital delivery.
Notice the motion which can be deferred.
Oh.
Is that it? Apart from that?
Well, can I offer up a suggestion?
Yeah.
Chair, is that obviously since the last TDC meeting, Michael has very kindly done a site visit in terms of the Metro and the extension to Edgbaston Village with members, and it was very well supported by members. The next MEG, Member Engagement Group, will be focused mainly on Metro because the last one was focused entirely on rail. So what I would suggest, if it's okay with Michael, is that he could do the Metro monitoring delivery update at that, and then following that MEG, we could circulate it to all members.
It's okay. Yeah. I'm so sorry about that, Michael. Yeah, okay. Thank you, that's helpful. It's everything, isn't it? Sorry, Pete, say that again. Explain it.
So item 14 was originally proposed prior to item 11 coming forward on the agenda anyway. So the vast majority of that is subsumed into agenda item 11.
Okay. Right, I think we've got there then. So we now go into private session. Yes.